A hiker vanished in 1996. In 2023, her ring was found buried beside a broken camera. It began when the first pale light of dawn touched the ridge of Mary's Rock on September 2nd, 1996, as 25-year-old Laura Bennett stepped onto the forest floor. The air was cool and crisp, carrying the scent of pine needles and damp earth. Shenandoah National Park had waited all summer to drape its hillsides in autumn color, and on this morning, the leaves were already beginning to shift from deep green to fiery gold and crimson. Laura paused to savor that moment, sunlight sifting through the branches, birds stirring in their nests, the sound of a distant creek. She smiled beneath her red baseball cap. This forest felt like home. Born and raised in Charlottesville, Virginia, Laura had discovered Shenandoah's trails the summer she turned 10. Her parents, Mark, a high school history teacher, and Diane, botanical illustrator, brought her each year to camp near Big Meadows. From those early visits, Laura developed an unshakable bond with the woods. She spent summers hiking Old Rag Mountain, photographing wildflowers for her mother, and reading Thoreau's essays in the shade of old oaks. When she graduated from the University of Virginia that spring with a degree in environmental science, she knew she had to spend one final month roaming the park alone before settling into a more conventional life. She had planned her trip carefully. After saving money from part-time jobs, she booked a small cabin at Skyland Resort, nearly the only lodge in the park that remained open year-round. On September 1st, she left a postcard for her parents. "Dear Mom and Dad, arrived at Skyland last night. Spent midnight stargazing above Big Meadows. This morning I head up to Mary's Rock for sunrise photos. I'll return by noon. Love, Laura." Her roommate Sarah worried about her venturing so deep into the wilderness alone, but Laura reassured her, "I know these trails like the back of my hand. Just be patient, I'll send you pictures when I get back." At 6:10 a.m. on September 2nd, she clipped her guide-made compass to her day pack, slung her camera bag over her shoulder, and stepped onto Skyline Drive. The parking area for Mary's Rock Trailhead was still empty, save for a few early morning joggers. She signed in at the wooden visitor log, Laura Bennett, Charlottesville. Destination, Mary's Rock Summit. Expected return, noon, and tucked the slip into the box. The study of the logbook let the rangers know her planned route and timetable. Then she set off. The Mary's Rock Trail wound steadily upward through rich stands of oak and hickory. Laura had done this exact hike dozens of times. By 7 a.m., she reached Panther Gap, a broad rocky ledge offering a sweeping view of the rolling Blue Ridge foothills. She stopped to catch her breath and took a quick photograph of the valley below, noting the time, 7 a.m., September 2nd, 1996, Panther Gap sunrise. She sipped water, applied more sunscreen, and continued. Along the ridge, every 10th step required lifting her pack slightly as she navigated exposed roots and loose gravel. By 8:45 a.m., she reached a sign pointing east, the final footpath to Mary's Rock Summit. The last push-up was steep, but the promise of the overlook kept her spirits high. As she climbed the final rocky steps, deer tracks led off the trail into the forest. She knelt, snapped a quick shot of the tracks, then rose to step onto the granite slab at 9 a.m. The world seemed to open all at once. Endless ridges dyed in every shade of green, gold, and purplish haze stretching beyond the horizon. The steady breeze ruffled her hair as she stepped to the edge and clicked off multiple photos. She set her pack down and treated herself to a granola bar while scribbling a note in her small leather journal. September 2nd, 1996, Mary's Rock Summit. Sky clear. Temperature 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Feeling exhilarated. Planning to loop east toward Lewis Spring and return via Panther Gap by noon. Promised to be back for lunch. She carefully closed the journal, placed it in her chest pocket, and strapped her camera securely. The photographer in her wanted more, Another shot of the goldenrod swaying at the edge, the unbroken skyline to the east. So she left her bag and took 3 quick photos of the summit cairn, the ridgeline to the east, and a picnic table where a week-old map lay open, flapping in the wind. As she focused on the map, she noticed a group of 3 hikers approaching from the opposite direction, heading west. They waved, and she waved back, breathing deep and savoring the moment. Around 9:10 a.m., she picked up her day pack, flipped up the brim of her cap, and began descending the narrow trail that curved eastward, toward Lewis Spring and the lesser-known side loop that would return her to Panther Gap. The ridge descent was quicker, more forgiving on her knees, but the footing was uneven. She took careful steps as the ground tilted right along a series of boulders. At 9:30 a.m., she paused to photograph a patch of lily of the valley peeking through fallen leaves. She knelt, set her lens, and snapped a close-up. Time passed quickly. At 9:45 a.m., she resumed her march. That was the last time anyone would report seeing her alive. Over the next hour, substantially fewer hikers used that loop. The path gradually narrowed, and the forest canopy evened out into darker shade. At 10 a.m., a pair of volunteer hikers returning to Big Meadows spotted red fabric caught on a branch. They assumed it was a scrap from another hiker's pack and paid it no further mind. By 10:15 a.m., Laura's boots had tread onto a faint game trail that veered off the official route, a path used by deer and the occasional black bear searching for water. There, a bear track cut into damp soil near the outflow of Lewis Spring. Laura stooped to record it, snapping a quick photo that showed the 3 pads and claw imprints clearly, an image that would later surface in 2023 and confirm her exact whereabouts at that time. Somewhere between 10:15 and 10:30 a.m., she must have lost her balance. Whether startled by a bear or simply miscalculation on a loose rock, a sharp twist of her ankle sent pain up her leg. Her pack pitched her forward as she hit the ground. The camera flew from her hands, the plate shutter freezing mid-click as shards of plastic splintered. Her ring, given by her fiancé Robert in 1994, snagged on her glove and slipped off. She leaned against a rock, heart pounding, tears stinging. The forest floor was quiet except for the distant drip of water through moss, the clicking of insects, and the subtle rustle of leaves. She tried to stand, screaming away the shock, but the pain was too intense. She crumpled. She glanced at the clear water pooled in a rock crevice. Her reflection wavered, pale and wide-eyed. She tried again to rise, but her ankle throbbed and refused to hold her weight. She clutched her map, seeing errors in her handwriting, returned by a Panther Gap, and realized she could not possibly make it alone. She rummaged in her pack for the small handheld radio, dialed 640.125, but received only static. The forest made certain no cell phone call could pass. She unzipped her pack and withdrew her boots. No time to remove them. She quietly lay back, pressed her head to a pillow of damp pine needles, and listened to her heart pound. By 11 a.m., dehydration set in. She slowly crawled a few feet toward a patch of ferns to find a shady spot. She felt feverish. She tried to write in her journal, but managed only a half sentence. September 2nd fell. Ankle broken? Bear. Then she closed her eyes, hoping someone would come. She whispered Robert's name, repeated, "I love you," until her voice echoed hollowly among the trees. As the minutes stretched, her breathing slowed, and the forest settled into stillness. When Laura failed to return to Skyland by 12:30 p.m., her roommate Sarah became uneasy. Their agreement had been clear. Back by noon, no excuses. Sarah tried calling the park ranger station, but only recorded messages answered. She found a helpful clerk who agreed to check. Meanwhile, Laura's fiancé, Robert Foster, arrived at the lodge around 1 p.m., his brow furrowed. He'd been staying nearby in Luray and met Laura at dawn before she left. She kissed him goodbye, said she'd have lunch. Now she was nowhere to be found. Ranger John Marks immediately launched a search. At 2 p.m., a team of 4 rangers, including veteran Ranger Brian Talent, set up a grid search on the Mary's Rock side loop. They carried stretchers, ropes, and medical kits. The first searchers climbed to the summit, warding off rustling hikers, and called out Laura's name, Laura Bennett. Please respond. Their voices reverberated among the peaks but found no answer. By 3 p.m., they reached Panther Gap and descended eastward. They interviewed every hiker they passed. None had seen her since the summit other than the group she waved at. A middle-aged couple camping near Lewis Spring reported seeing tracks leading off the trail around 10:30 a.m., but assumed a bear or deer. Another volunteer said he heard distant shouting sometime around 3 p.m., but it was too muffled to understand. The rangers followed the game trail, marked by animal and boot prints. By 4 p.m., they found Laura's red baseball cap near a boulder. The brim was smeared with dirt and a hint of dried blood. Blood droplets spritzed on pine needles below indicated an injury. They set up a marker, radioed back, and called in dogs. The canines howled as they scaled the slope until one sat at the base of a rock. The searchers peered around and saw the mangled remains of Laura's camera body and the single uninterrupted footprints that led off in a different direction. But there was no sign of her. By dusk, they had searched every rock ledge, listened for any cries, and traced the broken lens fragments to a pebble bank near a small pool. They radioed an all clear for that quadrant but could not find Laura's footprints. At 6 p.m., they resumed grid search toward Holly Run. A thin mist settled over the slopes as they climbed, flashlights cutting arcs of yellow across the trees. Each ranger called her name in varying tones, pleading, reassuring, hopeful. But only the echo returned. By 8 p.m., the search and rescue team conceded defeat for the night. They set up a temporary command post in Big Meadow's picnic area. A small group of ranger vehicles formed a circle. Rangers sat around a makeshift fire pit, wrapping scarves, sharing bottled water. They knew the chances of finding her alive were slim. The further she moved from the trail, the greater the danger. They radioed for thermal imaging helicopters, but the forest canopy blocked most infrared signatures. A cold drizzle began. At 10 p.m., Ranger Talent pronounced tonight's suspension of ground search, hoping to pick up at first light. Laura's parents, Mark and Diane Bennett, arrived at Skyline Drive shortly before first light on September 3rd. They had driven all night from Charlottesville. Diane's knuckles were white around the steering wheel. They had alerted hospital staff to Rachel's absence, but no calls came from any hospitals. They navigated the winding park road by map, stopping at each ranger station until they found the search headquarters at Big Meadows. Mark stepped out, startled by the cool air and pine scent. He spotted a small crowd huddled around a table with maps taped to plywood. Diane, clutching a flannel blanket around her shoulders, approached a ranger who recognized her. "Mrs. Bennett, I'm Ranger Talent. I'm so sorry," he said. "We've been searching since yesterday afternoon. We found her cap near Lewis Spring, but no further trace of her. We're gathering more volunteers now." Diane tried to speak, but tears turned her throat to sand. Mark wrapped his arm around her. "We'll find her," he said, though his voice cracked. They watched as teams of rangers and volunteers, college students, retirees, even local teens, assembled for another grid sweep. Each person carried headlamps, trekking poles, and two-way radios. Mark asked if he could join, but Ranger Talent gently said, "We'll keep you updated. It's too dangerous off the trail." The Bennetts nodded and accepted seats in a small camper parked nearby. Amanda, Laura's high school sister, arrived later that day, pale, disbelieving. She embraced her parents at the campground. I want to be part of the search, she said. Please let me. Talent hesitated, then agreed. We'll assign you a volunteer buddy tomorrow. Amanda nodded, trying to stay composed. On September 3rd at dawn, grid teams spread out across the east slope, near Lewis Spring, the brambles off Holly Run, the hollow near Mongoose Creek. Helicopters buzzed overhead at mid-morning. Dogs traced faint scents in leaf litter. Rangers called every 15 minutes to check in and check out of assigned grids. Amanda hiked alongside a seasoned volunteer, Carlin Gwynn, who led her through thick brush. Carla taught Amanda to look for subtle signs: a bruise of disturbed earth, a scrap of fabric snagged on a thorn, animal tracks that diverged from a likely footpath. By 11 a.m., Amanda and Carla reached a fallen oak, its bark peeling like old paper. Beneath the roots lay a partially hidden wooden sign that read, "Born in 1880 is Cattle Path." That meant they were near the old logging road, a place where hikers rarely went. They heard the distant hum of a drone. Carla told Amanda they're mapping heat signatures. Let's keep our eyes down here. At 2 p.m., Ranger Talent called Amanda's radio. Have you found anything? She pressed the talk button. Nothing yet, sir. He replied, keep going. We have to leave no leaf unturned. She tightened her boots and pressed on. By sundown, nothing indicated Laura's presence apart from the broken lens fragments and that single red baseball cap. No blood droplets, no footprints beyond the known area. The Bennetts spent another night in their camper, holding fading hope. As word of Laura's disappearance spread, local churches held prayer circles. Students at the University of Virginia posted flyers offering counseling to her parents. Small donations poured in to fund search and rescue operations, gas cards, volunteer hot meals, blankets for nighttime shifts. The Charlottesville Parks Foundation pledged to cover costs if a bounty needed to be offered. Meanwhile, rumors circulated. Some said hikers had seen Laura after 9:45 a.m., running south as if fleeing something. Others believed she had encountered a bear or fallen off a narrow ledge. But none of these tips produced a single confirmed sighting. By September 10th, 8 days after her disappearance, the official search wound down. The park superintendent announced, "We have no credible signs of Ms. Bennett. We will maintain a small presence for continued patrols, but we must assume she has either left the park or succumbed to the elements." The Bennetts stood at the ranger station when he spoke. Diane shook. "We can't give up," she whispered. Mark held her hand. "We'll keep looking." Amanda nodded, tears falling. "I won't let her be forgotten." From 1996 until 2023, Laura Bennett's fate remained unsolved. Her photograph, printed on missing person flyers, faded in volunteer vehicles and small local stores. Her parents held out hope but also juggled daily life. Mark continued teaching history at Richmond High School. Diane resumed her botanical illustration business, and Amanda finished her studies at UVA. They celebrated birthdays without Laura. They never burned out the search flame. Holidays always included a candle by her empty place at the table. Ranger Talent retired in 2008. He remembered Laura's case as one that never quite closed. Each year, park volunteers would do a remembrance hike near Mary's Rock on the anniversary of her disappearance. They left yellow trillium petals on a small plaque at the summit. In memory of Laura Bennett, Chasing Light, 1971 to 1996. But no new evidence ever surfaced. Rangers archived Laura's camera pieces in a dusty box of inert evidence at park headquarters in Luray. That box sat under a metal shelf, out of sight, until an intern discovered it during a 2002 cleanup. The lens fragments found in 1996 were stored in a small plastic bag. The ring legend said, "Remain missing." They assumed she wore it until she died. Few believed anyone would find it in the thick undergrowth. Through the years, other hikers vanished in remote corners of Shenandoah. But Laura's case lingered as one of the oldest unsolved mysteries. Every once in a while, someone would call to say they'd found an old camp cup or a tarnished locket. The park archivist would label it, photograph it, and note it in a ledger as possible Laura Bennett item. But none could be confirmed. The Bennetts prayed quietly, lit candles in their Charlottesville home, and wondered if they would ever know what happened to their daughter. By September 2023, Shenandoah's slopes were vibrant with fall color once again. Leaves blazed bright red and yellow as crisp air hinted of frost. Skyline Drive was lined with tourists clutching cameras and sipping coffee. Marauding deer wandered close enough to startle visitors. Among the park's dedicated hikers was 28-year-old Mia Jacobs, a former intern turned volunteer coordinator for a group called Trail Seekers, hikers united by a desire to search for lost belongings and help families of missing persons. Mia had grown up near Harrisonburg, visited Shenandoah as a child, and had always admired the scenery. When she learned about Laura's disappearance as a teenager, she felt a deep tug. One day, she told her grandfather, a retired ranger, "I'll find something that helps that family." In early August 2023, Mia convinced Park Superintendent Helen Rivers to allow a focused remembrance lapse expedition near Lewis Spring, an area famously associated with Laura's last confirmed photos. Mia promised to follow strict scientific methods, grid mapping, systematic metal detector sweeps, and immediate reporting of any finds. She assembled a small team: Carlos Mendoza, a professional geographer, Jessica Lee, a local high school science teacher, and two experienced volunteers, Carlin Nguyen, who had participated in Laura's original searches as a teen, and Marcus Poole, an Eagle Scout with an eagle's keen eye for small objects hidden in leaf litter. On September 5th at 9:30 a.m., the team gathered at the gravel parking area near Lewis Spring. The hollow lay silent, save for the burble of a small waterfall feeding a slim pool. Moss covered every rock, and a dense carpet of dry leaves crackled underfoot. Mia checked her notes. The original search grid from 1996 placed Laura's camera lens fragments within 10 yards of this spot. Ranger Rivers had approved 3 days of dedicated fieldwork. Today, each volunteer carried a metal detector, trowel, GPS unit, and 2 empty specimen bags. At 9:45 a.m., Mia swung her detector low over the ground. A steady tone hummed as the coil passed over a rusted fragment, likely an old cantab. She dug carefully, brushing away a thin layer of leaves and soil. When her trowel struck metal, she pried up a small golden band. She knelt, brushed dirt aside, and gasped. It was a woman's ring with a small diamond. The inner band showed an inscription, March 15, 1994, Eleanor. The letters were faint but unmistakable. Mia's breath caught. "It's her ring," she whispered. The others gathered around. Carlos double-checked the inscription. "That matches what we know Laura's engagement ring from Robert Foster," he said. Mia gently placed the ring in an evidence bag. Her heart pounded as she scanned the surrounding ground. The metal detector beeped again about 6 feet away. Marcus knelt and uncovered a broken camera body, plastic shell cracked, shutter frozen open. A faded sticker printed "Property of L. Bennett, Charlottesville" clung to one side. Jessica's hands trembled as she bagged the camera body. "This was buried," she said. "Look at the soil layered on top." Mia radioed Ranger Rivers, who arrived within the hour with forensics officers. They documented the exact coordinates, GPS reading 38.45321 degrees north, 78.34887 degrees west, then carefully exhumed the ring and camera. Ranger Rivers knelt and placed a single yellow trillium petal beneath each item as a symbol of remembrance. "We'll call Laura's family," she said. "Thank you all for doing this." On September 7, 2023, the Bennetts received the call. Mark and Diane were in their Charlottesville home when the phone rang. Bennett residents, Diane answered. A deep male voice said, "Mrs. Bennett, this is Ranger Helen Rivers from Shenandoah National Park. We found Laura's ring and camera body near Lewis Spring. We need you and Mr. Bennett to come immediately." Diane pressed the handset to her cheek. "It can't be," she whispered. Mark took the phone. "We're on our way," he said, his voice shaking. They arrived at the park entrance mid-afternoon. The leaves outside Skyland Resort were a riot of gold and orange. Ranger Rivers met them at the visitor center, guiding them to a small meeting room. Inside lay a table covered with white linen. On a velvet cushion rested the gold ring. Beside it lay the battered camera body. Diane's hand flew to her mouth. Mark put his arm around her. Amanda arrived moments later, her hair pulled back, eyes red from travel. When she saw the ring, she gasped, dropped to her knees, and wept into her mother's lap. Ranger Rivers gently lifted the ring. "We recorded its location precisely," she said. "Forensic tests confirm it's Laura's. The camera body also belonged to her. Serial number matches store records." Mr. Bennett reached out and wrapped his trembling fingers around the ring. "It's hers," he said, voice thick. "She left it behind when it meant everything." Diane brushed a tear. "This changes everything," she whispered. "Now we know part of her story." Ranger Rivers led them to Lewis Spring. The group hiked in silence, the Bennetts struggling to absorb each rustle of leaves and drip of water as echoes of Laura's last hours. When they arrived at the small excavation pit, now cordoned off by orange tape, they saw a single pine sapling planted by Mia and volunteers. A sign read, "September 5th, 2023, Laura Bennett's ring and camera discovered here." In honor of her memory, Mark knelt and touched the damp earth. He imagined Laura kneeling on the same spot, fearless and full of wonder. He whispered, "Sweetheart, we found you at last." Diane held him, her head against his shoulder, tears streaming. Amanda knelt beside them, pulling out her tablet to show photos of Laura's childhood. Laura with a baby raccoon, Laura hugging her parents beneath a willow. They spent hours at the site, recounting memories and placing fresh yellow trillium petals around the sapling. At dusk, the sapling's slender silhouette rose against the fiery sky like a beacon of hope. Following the ring and camera discovery, Shenandoah Park staff, Virginia State Police, and forensic experts began a formal investigation. Detective Paul Reynolds, assigned from Richmond in October 2023, took charge of the case. He convened a meeting at the Luray Police Department. Every slide of Laura's original photographs, every witness statement from 1996, and the newly uncovered evidence from Lewis Spring and Holly Run. By then, a small grieving crowd had taken shape. Mia Jacobs, Ranger Talent, retired, Ranger Tolliver, current patrol ranger, Carlin Gwynn, volunteer, and Amanda Bennett. Reynolds began by summarizing the newly established timeline. 9:45 a.m., September 2nd, 1996. Last confirmed sighting at Mary's Rock Summit. 10:05 a.m., September 2nd, 1996. Photographed near Lewis Spring of bear tracks and Laura adjusting her camera. October 5th, 2023. Broken camera body discovered 6 inches beneath soil at Lewis Spring. October 6, 2023. Blue jacket fragment and boot heel found under a boulder near Holly Run. October 9, 2023. Partial letter discovered in 1996 by former janitor Henry Young, bearing the lines, "I'm sorry for what happened. It was an accident." I loved her smile. Reynolds let the silence stretch as the group digested these details. He tapped a pointer on the map. Here is the main trail to Mary's Rock. Here's the side loop toward Lewis Spring. Here's where Laura's camera and ring were buried. Here's Holly Run. Notice the slope angle and the distance. She covered nearly 2 miles between Summit and Spring in 20 minutes, roughly a 6-mile-an-hour pace. Impressive if she was unhurt. But that suggests urgency. Then, after the fall, she likely crawled or tried to limp toward water, hence Hines Spring and down into Holly Run Hollow. Carlin Gwynn piped up, "I found fragments of her blue rain jacket under the boulder, near a boot heel, likely one of Laura's boots. That means she crawled there at some point." The boulder under which we found these was a known shelter from rain. She may have tried to spend the night there. Amanda pressed her hands together. What about the letter? Whoever wrote it said they loved her smile. That suggests they knew her. Maybe a friend or coworker. Reynolds nodded. We tracked down Henry Young. He worked as a janitor at Skyland Lodge 1994 to 1998. He found a partially burnt letter addressed to L. Bennett in the Skyland attic in September 1996. He thought it was trash and burned most of it. The fragment reads, "I'm sorry for what happened. It was an accident. I loved her smile." The letter referenced returning her camera. He paused. We traced that fragment to custom monogram stationery from Luray. LB was printed in the corner. A man named Bob Miller purchased that same stationery on August 25, 1996. He worked as a handyman at Skyland. Miller admitted he found Laura unconscious near Holly Run, tried to carry her up to the lodge, but she died after falling again. He panicked, buried her ring and camera near Lewis Spring, took some personal items, her jacket scrap, a photo of her smiling at a campfire, and burned her letter. Mia rubbed her forehead. He tried to help, but it was an accident. Reynolds nodded. Yes, he testified under oath that he panicked, convinced no one would believe an accident. The judge gave him a misdemeanor sentence for improper disposal of human remains, 6 months of community service with search and rescue teams. He's cooperating fully. Amanda exhaled a shaky sigh. I can't imagine the guilt he must have felt for 27 years. Ranger Talent added, Miller's confession explains why her remains were never found. He moved Laura's body into a hidden crevice, then covered it. He returned to Skyland and never told anyone. That's why no remains turned up during initial searches. Reynolds placed a hand on Amanda's shoulder. You have her answers now. We can confirm your sister died from injuries after the fall. There was no foul play, no bear attack, no malicious intent. But he should have called for help. If he had, Laura might have survived. Amanda nodded, tears falling. I understand. Thank you for finding the truth. On December 1st, 2023, Laura's family arranged for a private ceremony at the small community cemetery near Charlottesville, where her ancestors rested. An oak sapling, donated by Shenandoah Park in memory of Laura, stood at the plot's edge. The urn containing her ashes was placed in a granite niche with the inscription, Laura Bennett, 1971 to 1996. Her light guides our steps. Mark, Diane, and Amanda surrounded the plot, clutching the found ring. The winter sun was low, turning the sky pink and violet. A chill wind blew, carrying the scent of wood smoke from nearby chimneys. Diane carefully slipped the ring onto her finger, where Laura's finger would have rested, and laid a single yellow trillium as tribute. Mark placed a photograph, Laura kneeling at Mary's Rock, gazing east at sunrise. Amanda, holding back tears, read a letter she had written. Dear sister, I vow to carry your memory through every trail I hike, every photograph I take, and every life I touch. You showed me how to chase the light, even when the woods felt dark. Your journey did not end in silence. It echoes in every leaf that trembles in the wind. They stood in silence until the sky darkened, then walked away with intertwined hands. They left behind a small bench facing east toward the mountains, where visitors could sit and reflect on Laura's spirit of wandering and wonder. In spring 2024, Shenandoah National Park formally dedicated Laura's Day on September 2nd each year, a day to honor her memory and promote hiker safety. On September 2nd, 2024, A group of 150 hikers gathered at 5:30 a.m. atop Mary's Rock. Ranger Tolliver read Laura's final journal entry from the summit. I know the forest is always changing, yet it stays the same at its heart. I will find beauty if I keep my eyes open. A hush fell over the crowd as dawn's rosy glow illuminated the endless ridges. Each hiker lit a small candle and placed it along the rocky ledge. As the candles flickered, Ranger Talent led a moment of silence. For the first time, the Bennetts stood at the plaque that read, "In memory of Laura Bennett, Chasing Light, 1971 to 1996. Throughout the day, volunteers participated in a lost item hunt near Lewis Spring. Equipped with metal detectors and grid maps, they hoped to find any remaining artifacts from Laura's final hours. While they did not recover additional items, the event strengthened community bonds and reminded park staff of the persistent challenges of remote searches. In October 2024, park officials opened a small exhibit in the newly renovated Big Meadows Visitor Center, Laura's Journey Echoes in the Ridge. The exhibit displayed the found ring and broken camera body in a glass case, enlarged prints of Laura's 1996 photographs, wildflowers, deer tracks, the summit cairn of Mary's Rock, a timeline tracing her last hours, witness accounts from 1996, and details of the 2023 discovery. The partial burnt letter from 1996 with an annotated transcript. An interactive touchscreen map allowing visitors to trace Laura's route and see GPS coordinates of where items were found. Visitors left messages in a leather-bound guest book. Thank you for sharing her story. I now walk these woods with more care. My son goes to Shenandoah every year. We'll bring him here next time. Your loss has helped so many. May Laura rest in peace." Mia Jacobs volunteered as a docent, guiding school groups through the exhibit. She told them, "Laura taught us to pay attention to the small details, the rustle of leaves, a gleam in the dirt, a fragmented memory. When you hike, look around. If you see something out of place, speak up. It could be the piece of a story someone needs." By summer 2025, Mia's idea of the 100-mile pledge had grown far beyond Shenandoah's trails. Volunteers from Great Smoky Mountains National Park and the Appalachian Trail Conservancy adopted similar programs. Hikers committed to Empty Ordeal, promising to walk 100 miles in their home parks, reporting lost items, and checking posted missing person flyers. The ripple effect spread to state parks. In Virginia's Mount Rogers Recreation Area, a group called Searchlight used Laura's story as inspiration to mount their own lost item hunts. Each program emphasized teamwork, careful grid mapping, and systematic use of metal detectors. At Shenandoah in June 2025, a volunteer named Rosa Hernandez found a small silver pendant near the Masu Falls overlook. It bore the initials LB Suspicion Sword, but forensic analysis determined it belonged to another missing hiker from 1991. Yet the excitement showed how Laura's case had awakened people to hidden clues. In September 2025, a news report aired on Virginia Public Broadcasting, From Morning to Action, How One Hiker's Story Changed Park Safety. It featured interviews with Mark and Diane Bennett, who discussed the Bennett Foundation for Hiker Safety, created in early 2025. The foundation funded emergency beacons, solar-powered SOS devices installed near remote trailheads, particularly Lewis Spring and Holly Run. Lost and Found Overhaul, a digital catalog for all found items in the park with photos and GPS tags. Annual Laura's Day conferences, workshops for rangers and volunteers to learn advanced search techniques, forensics, and technology in remote areas. Ranger Talent said in the report, "Every year we conduct hundreds of rescue and search missions. Having that extra beacon and digital database can save lives." Park officials reported a 40% decrease in the time needed to locate lost hikers under 1 year of life. On September 2, 2026, Shenandoah held its second annual Laura's Day with greater attendance. Over 300 hikers, volunteers, and families of missing persons. The sky was cloudless, and dawn broke gently over Mary's Rock summit. Mia Jacobs guided the crowd to the overlook at 5:45 a.m., passing out small printed cards with Laura's final journal entry. I feel a pull toward the unknown. The forest is always changing, yet it stays the same at its heart. I know I will find beauty if I keep my eyes open. As the pink light crept along the ridges, Ranger Tolliver read aloud names of Shenandoah's missing hikers since the park's creation, 36 souls whose stories had not ended. Laura's name was first on the list. A hush fell. Then the Bennetts placed a single yellow trillium among others at the plaque. In mid-September 2026, Detective Reynolds published a short article in the Virginia Historical Quarterly, The Bennett Case, Lessons in Search, Remembrance, and Community Resilience. He wrote, Laura's tragic accident and the subsequent decades of silence taught us that remote wilderness can harbor secrets for years. It also taught us that a single ring discovered under leaves can unravel those secrets and change the way we guard our trails. Mia, now recognized as a leading volunteer, wrote in the local newspaper, When I first learned of Laura's story, I thought it was simply a cautionary tale. But it became a mission to restore dignity to families left in the dark. I've seen grief turn into purpose, into safer trails, into stronger communities. The following autumn, in October 2026, Shenandoah experienced an unusually early snowfall. Heavy flurries blanketed Mary's Rock in white. A small team of searchers, exploring for any remaining evidence for prior cases, found a lone hiking boot, 2 ridges away from Laura's original grid. It was cracked, decayed, and caked in ice. A familiar shoemaker's logo on the heel confirmed it matched Laura's 1996 boots. Nearby, beneath several inches of snow, they uncovered a fragment of a blue thermos identical to those sold at Big Meadows in 1995. When the frost melted in spring 2027, park staff cataloged the new finds in the Shenandoah Park Museum alongside the ring, camera, and locket. The museum display now showcased 6 years of incremental discoveries, each item like a page from Laura's final chapter. On May 5, 2027, the UVA Environmental Club, guided by Amanda Bennett, unveiled a scholarship fund in Laura's name, the Bennett Scholarship for Environmental Storytelling. It offered $5,000 each year to a student combining photography and conservation. At the modest ceremony on the lawn, Amanda held a slideshow of her sister's photos. She spoke gently. Laura believed that images could inspire people to protect the world they love. We honor her by giving that chance to new voices. As the ribbons were cut, a hush fell over the small crowd. Ranger Talent and Mia looked on with pride. The echoes of Laura's footsteps lingered in the forest, a faint rhythm in the pines on the wind. Nearly 3 decades after her disappearance, Laura Bennett's story continues to unfold. Her ring, found quietly buried under fallen leaves. Her camera body, hidden beneath moss. Her letter, half burned and rescued by chance. Each artifact spoke of a woman who loved the wilderness and trusted its paths. They also spoke of human frailty, the fear and guilt of a man who found her, tried to save her, then buried her secret. But ultimately, they spoke of redemption, of how a community's dedication and modern detection methods can bring light to the darkest corners. Shenandoah's trails still weave through ridges and hollows, where mist drifts in the morning and goldenrod stands like tiny flames. Hikers now carry the lessons of Laura's journey with each step, to be vigilant, to respect nature's power, and to look for the smallest signs, a glint of metal under leaves, the glimmer of a yellow trillium, because a single discovery can rewrite a story. At dawn on September 2nd each year, those who gather at Mary's Rock carry candles to remember Laura's bright spirit. They leave behind wildflower petals and silent prayers. And as the sun moves over pines, the forest seems to murmur back, "She is with us still." In the end, Laura's life was brief, a single bright flame flickering in the shadowy forest canopy. But her memory endures, in the scholar discovering a rare fern by Lewis Spring, in the student hiker pausing to photograph a sunrise, in every footstep that honors the pilgrims of the path. The forest may change, but its heart remains, and in that heart, Laura's echo lives on.